Hi and welcome to this video where I've replaced the fuel filter, and then if we look at from this camera we can see that we've now got the inlet manifold back on and also the injectors are back in, albeit loosely. So in this video what I've done basically is to replace the four seals, rubber seals on the top where the injectors go down into the tubes, and then came to the injectors. I've reground the seats for the injectors using this tool here. Replaced the copper washers on the end of the injectors. Put a bit of ceramic grease down the length of the injectors and popped them all back in. And then just tightened them up loosely for now, because obviously the pipes have got to go on, so we need a little bit of movement. Then onto the manifold. I've cleaned the manifold with a bit of Mr. Muscle. Replaced all the 8 seals on there and pop that back on as well. So hopefully the engine's actually starting to get somewhere now, and hopefully the end is in sight. So hopefully this video will be of use to you, and like I say, if you can like and subscribe, that'd be much appreciated. And I'd also like to give my thanks to Curtis, who sent me a rather generous coffee donation. Thank you for that, Curtis, much appreciated. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy this video and have a good weekend. So we start by refitting the diesel fuel filter. So I'll give a couple of photos here just to show what the fuel filter and the bracket look like, and then we can also see the fuel in and out connections as well. Like so, there's also an electrical connector on there. So this is the HDF 939, and there's the mounting holes for that. Okay, so we start with the bracket. Have a quick look at that. So it's 3 mounting screws and it's an 8mm socket for that. Now I do notice that they actually have a bit of red Loctite on. So I don't think these need to be tightened too tight, especially with the red Loctite. They seemed quite stiff. It's probably about 10 Newton meters, I would have thought. Something like that. Maybe 15. Anyway, so I've just done it hand tight. That should be sufficient, I believe, on that. And then we can get the filter itself. So this is obviously the old one. So it's going to take a bit of purging to get the fuel back into this. And this basically just clips in, which is obviously the similar way to how it came out. Now I do think the electrical connector there is for a heater, I believe. Perhaps to help with winter starting. And there is sort of like a blank plug at the bottom, which I believe might have been for a water sensor. So we'll plug this one on. I think this is from the tank. That's the lower one. And then this upper one seems to go to the primer bulb. So that's presumably fuel out. And then the electrical connector for the heater. So we just pop that in. Okay, so that's the fuel filter back on the car now. Right then, so we can now fit the new diesel injector seals. Okay, so these all came in like a kit, like a bit of a service kit, I think. So we've got quite a few different things there. We've got the copper injector seals, we've got the plastic spacers there, and we've got some green little seals for the return pipes that go on the top of the injectors. So these are the 4 seals that will be concerning us now, and it says to mount them on a 20mm diameter socket. So just showing you that there. It's the diameter that's important. Now I'm going to just put a little bit of silicone grease on there, and then I'm going to wipe the excess off. I just want a slight smear on there just to help these seals go on. Whoop! Butterfingers there. Alright, so that's the seal, so it just pushes on like so. Now it's not quite as simple as I thought. I thought it was basically line them up like so and just push the seal down which turned out to be a bit more of a problem than I thought.
How do you push that in?
How do you push that in, exactly? So then I thought, well, perhaps if I put some of the old seals on, I can just try and use them as like a spacer to push down on the new seal. So one wasn't enough, I tried two. So obviously I need to try and get it past the lip on the tube. So it's still not past that tube yet. Obviously I don't want to damage the lip on the new seals. So it's partly on there, still not enough. So then what I did was used a tool that you use for pulling the valve seals on cylinder heads off, because it sort of has rounded ends on, so I could just sort of use that to push it in. So that seems to be in. So we've now just got to do that another 3 times. So let's see how this one goes. So we've got our sort of method worked out now. Oh, that one's sort of gone straight on, so that's not too bad. So just give that a little bit of a poke around the other side. Get the old seal back out. So that one's worked, that went in quite nicely. I was tempted to actually reuse the old seals. I think it was probably a good idea that I actually bought new ones. Obviously these stop the oil going down to the hole that the injector's in. Okay, so let's see if our luck will hold out on this one now. Yeah, that went in nicely. So obviously it's all going to change now for the remaining cylinder, because unfortunately when I put that tube back in, I didn't quite get it exactly straight. So what happened was it actually nipped the edge of the seal slightly. I've actually deleted that from the video, but it did nip the edge of the seal, unfortunately. Hopefully it'll be okay. Time will tell. Right then, so now to fit the plastic injector spacers. So they're simple enough. Again, I could have probably reused the old ones. So they obviously ultimately push the seals down into the correct place anyway. I wonder if I could have put one of those on the socket, thinking about it. That might have worked. A couple of those would have pushed it in. Didn't think of that. Right then, so now to using the Draper diesel injector seat cutter set. So we'll have a quick look at it. This is what it looks like. Now this one did look like quite a good quality set. I did look at some of the cheaper ones, and they did look a little bit too cheap. And I thought really we do want some precision here because of those injectors. So although I think you could get a set for something like £20, I thought I'd probably best spend a little bit more and try and get something a bit better. I don't know, when you look at the cutters on this set, you can sort of see that they do actually look like they've been machined properly. So I think this is probably quite a good set for the money. And they're actually numbered at the bottom. So it's number 2 I need, which is for the Delphi Bosch injectors. And that one's not flat, so, and I'm just going to check now with one of the seals just to see what sort of diameter we've got, and that obviously looks about right, sort of like a bit of an extra confirmation there. So the T-handle on this also looked quite nice as well. Some of them just look like they were rammed in with a bit of welding. That's actually quite a nice finish to it. So that's looking like it mimics the injector quite nicely. So we'll pop that on and see if we can sort of tidy up the inside of these holes.
Now it does say to put a little bit of light lubrication on to stop chattering. So that's a bit of duck oil there. So obviously I don't want to overdo this, I just want to see a nice shiny ring as it were at the end. Unfortunately I've got mostly tar on that one, so I think we'll just brush it off with a wire brush and pop it in again and see what we get now. So that's looking a bit better. Just check that with the torch. Maybe one more, a few more turns there just to tidy that up. And that's looking nice and shiny. So the copper washers should sit on that quite nicely now. So I'll get some lubrication on it now and then go for the second cylinder. So I'm not spinning it too much. It does say to just rotate it the least amount possible, I think. So cylinders 2 and 3 weren't too bad. They didn't actually have the tar or lava inside like cylinders 1 and 4 did. So these aren't too bad anyway. So we'll just give it a couple of spins just to tidy that up. Because obviously we want those copper seals to make the best contact so that the high pressure gases don't escape past those copper seals and start causing more lava and tar to start building up inside those tubes again. So now onto the final one. So this one was tarry, and yep, so there's plenty of tar there. So I'll give that a couple more spins and then that should be okay. Right, so what I'll do is I'm going to use a bit of torque paper here. This isn't the cheap blue roll, this is the decent stuff because it won't fall apart like the cheap stuff. So I can actually put this in and spin it around, and it's more like using a cloth because it literally holds together. It's really good stuff. I say some of that cheap blue roll, you start, as soon as it gets a bit of wet, it starts to fall apart, and it's almost like using toilet tissue. So I do recommend this torque blue roll. It's quite expensive, but then it lasts quite a long time. So we just do this one now. So that's also bringing up some of the little metal shavings there. So that certainly won't do any harm to get those out. Okay. So then what I'll do is I'll just pop this all back into the set. It's all ready for next time. Like so. It's always quite nice when you actually have something that's got a nice tool. It's always nice to just put it all back together so it's ready. Hopefully it won't rust. Okay then, so now refitting the 4 injectors. So here we are, and there's our 4 copper injector seals. Now I heard that Mercedes recommends putting ceramic grease on, and I also think BMW suggest it on their diesel engines. So I'm thinking if it's good enough for them, we'll put a bit of that on ours as well. So I think this sort of helps the injectors come back out if you get the lava flow start building up in those tubes again, which was so much of a problem when I was trying to remove 2 of these injectors. Now I was hoping the copper washers would actually grip better than they did to the nozzles. I think they are actually supposed to grab a bit. These seem to be sort of somewhat loose, which obviously means when I come to put them in the holes, the washers will probably fall off down the hole. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue because it can't actually go anywhere. There we go. Just as I was saying. I better just check that's flat. Obviously you don't want it at an angle. But as long as it's flat in there, the injector should just go straight down. Like so. So make sure these go back in the correct order that they came out of, because they are actually coded to the ECU. So we'll pop that one in there. That's number 2. Paranoid now, just checking it's still there. Copper washer can't actually go anywhere really. Then number 3. I'm actually taking a bit of a risk there that washer didn't fall off and go down one of the inlet ports. I still don't seem to have learnt my lesson there, because with some of those valves will probably be open and could obviously drop the washer straight inside and onto the piston. And we've already been there before. Okay, so that's the last injector now in. So what we just need to do then is put the 7mm hex cap screws on. Now they must be tightened evenly, but obviously we don't need to actually tighten them at this stage, because we do need to put the pipes back on. So once we've got the pipes located, then we can start tightening things up. We'll just spin those on. As you can see, I replaced the 8 injector screws there, the ones that had all the problems trying to get them out. So we have got new screws on that. Okay, so they're still moving. So this is what it looks like now before we put the inlet manifold on. Right then, so the next thing is now to clean and refit the inlet manifold. So again, a couple of photos just showing the fixing holes of the inlet manifold and the 8 rubber seals that need to be put on. So I've already given it a bit of a spray. Well, I've given it loads of spray with carb cleaner, but I do keep saying that oven cleaner is extremely effective. Now it does appear to be pretty good. So I did spray it this morning and then just left it there for a bit, and then I'm giving it a second go now, which is lunchtime, and then I'll leave this for half an hour and then rinse it out after lunch. But it does seem to work quite well, because obviously it foams up inside all the cavity and chambers, and it does seem to break it down quite nicely. So here we are, half an hour later. Let's see what pours out. Well, it's definitely black. So I think that's probably the cleanest it's ever been, actually, with the oven cleaner. So I'll just take that outside now, and we'll just run a hose through that to get the remainder of the oven cleaner out. We obviously don't want that going into the engine. So thoroughly clean that out, and then I'll dry that off with some compressed air. Now what I'm going to do is just check that nothing is down those inlet ports first. I'm just going to use Henry the Hoover and just check. There we go, everything's clear, that's good. So I can go back to the manifold now and put the seals on. Now these parts I think were actually supposed to be fixed on there. I think they might have been glued. So I don't know whether I was a bit too rough when I removed the inlet manifold. those have actually all just been in oven cleaner as well. So as you can see, they've come up quite nice. So I've got my new seals now. So 4 are larger than the others, than the other 4. And again, I'm just going to put a little bit of silicone grease on just to help those slip on without actually damaging them at all. Now, I was actually quite surprised at how tight these are. So I think those plastic caps sort of probably act as a bit of a retainer so that those washers don't, or O-rings don't fall off when you come to put it on. But thankfully they are staying there while the seals go on. So hopefully that's all going to be good. You can actually see how tight that was. I was actually having to stand up to try and push that on. Right then, so let's bring this to the head cover now. The cam cover. So they're all present and correct. Just tuck it underneath there. And then in theory, just push it down. Now it was extremely tight. I was actually quite surprised at how tight this was, even with a bit of silicone grease on. So what you might find is you need to start actually tightening the screws up. So we get these back ones in. So it's an 8mm socket for these. So there's 2 at the back, and obviously there's 2 at the front as well. Now the ones at the front are actually tightened with the plastic cam cover that I haven't put on yet. But it's looking like I do need to sort of screw the front down as well, because it's just sitting there uneven at the moment. So I think what I'll do is I'll get some screws. I'll get the 2 front screws and perhaps add a couple of bolts as spacers. But wisely, I'm actually going to cover this up first so I don't drop the 2 nuts down in there. That's a sort of silly thing that would happen to me. Right, so hopefully we're safe now. So like I say, what I'll do is I'll put a nut on there, and that will act like the plastic housing of the camshaft cover, so I don't over tighten. And that way I can just pinch this in place, and then obviously I can just remove those nuts when I put the plastic cover on later on. Okay, so that's looking alright. So I'm just doing those hand tight for the moment. Right then, so here's some reference photographs that you can pause to view for longer. So we'll start here with the fuel filter and the bracket, and you can actually clearly see the red Loctite thread stuff on those. So here's the fuel in and out. Again, this is the HDF 939 filter, and there's the mounting holes on the side of the engine. So there's our inlet manifold and the new seals, the fixing holes, and then this is the set I used for cutting the seats. So as you can see, that's a Draper Expert model, and there's the instructions just in case you need to know, and that's the top of the engine before we put the inlet manifold on. So you've been watching refitting the diesel injectors and inlet manifold on a 2009 MINI R56, and thank you for watching, and I hope this helps you service and maintain your car within your budget. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in May 2022, and I can be found on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter as Coats and Gators.